Welcome to this Tutor2U Sociology topic video for Cambridge OCR A-Level Sociology. In this video we're going to look at familiar exploitation, the work of Christine Delphy and Diana Leonard. Familiar exploitation, a new analysis of marriage in contemporary Western societies, is one of the most influential feminist analyses of modern family life. This research is key to understanding how gender inequality is reproduced through the family, and how even in modern societies women continue to be economically and emotionally exploited by men. Delphy and Leonard were writing in the early 1990s, a time when feminism had already achieved many legal victories, such as equal pay legislation and anti-discrimination laws. However, radical feminists like Delphy and Leonard argued that these reforms hadn't changed the power dynamics inside the family, where men still benefited from women's unpaid labour. Their work built on earlier feminist writers like Anne Oakley, who highlighted women's domestic roles, and Margaret Benston, who linked women's unpaid housework to capitalism. But Delphy and Leonard took these ideas further, arguing that the family itself is a patriarchal economic system, not just a reflection of capitalism. Their book, Familiar Exploitation, aimed to show that inequality between men and women is rooted in the structure and everyday practices of family life. Delphy and Leonard wanted to investigate how patriarchy operates through the institution of the family, and how marriage and domestic roles serve to benefit men. Their main questions were: how does the family contribute to women's oppression? Why do women continue to perform unpaid domestic labour, even when they also work outside the home? And how do men benefit from women's work and emotional effort? They saw the family not as a private, loving refuge, as functionalists might describe it, but as a site of exploitation and control. Delphy and Leonard's perspective is radical feminists. Radical feminists see gender inequality as the most fundamental and universal form of social inequality, one that cuts across all societies and social classes. They argue that men as a group benefit from the subordination of women, and that patriarchy, male domination, is embedded in social institutions, values and everyday life. Delphy and Leonard rejected functionalist views like those of Parsons and Murdoch that portray the family as harmonious and beneficial for everyone. Instead, they described it as an economic system in which men exploit women's labour, much like capitalists exploit workers in Marxist theories. They also criticised Marxist feminists for suggesting that women's oppression mainly serves capitalism. For Delphy and Leonard, patriarchy is a system in its own right, not just a byproduct of capitalism. In short, the family doesn't just support capitalism, it supports patriarchy. Delphy and Leonard's research was theoretical and analytical rather than based on a single study. Their work is grounded in secondary research, drawing on surveys, household studies and time use data, combining this with sociological theory. They used qualitative analysis of existing research on domestic labour and family life, and used reasoning to build their theoretical model of family exploitation. They also used case studies and statistics to illustrate patterns of inequality, such as the unequal division of domestic work and financial control. While it's not an empirical field study, their arguments are supported by a broad range of data and earlier feminist research. Delphy and Leonard's central argument is that the family is an economic system based on unpaid labour, and that this system primarily benefits men. They see the family as being a system of production, describing the family as a mode of production, similar to capitalism where women provide labour and men control resources. Women's unpaid housework, cooking, cleaning and childcare contribute to the household's functioning, but men gain the primary benefit. Even when women work full-time, they still perform most domestic tasks, what Oakley referred to as the dual burden or second shift. The tasks women perform in the family are not recognised as real work because they are unpaid, yet they are essential to society's survival. They reproduce the labour force and sustain men's well-being. Delphy and Leonard argue that this unpaid domestic work is a form of economic exploitation because it generates value for others, that is, men and the economy, without pay. Delphy and Leonard also looked at male control and authority. Men control household finances, decision-making and sexual relationships. Even when women earn wages, men often retain more financial or social power within the family. They suggest that marriage is a labour contract. Women provide the domestic and emotional labour in exchange for financial support and security, but the relationship remains unequal. Delphy and Leonard also highlight that women not only perform physical tasks but also manage the emotional needs of the family. Comforting, caring and maintaining relationships, this emotional labour is taken for granted and adds to women's overall workload. They conclude that the family is not a neutral private unit, but a political institution, one that reinforces male dominance and socialises children into patriarchal values. They point to common evidence such as women doing around 2/3 of housework in dual-earner households, women being the ones to reduce working hours or give up careers after having children, and men benefiting from women's unpaid domestic support, freeing them to focus on paid work or leisure. These patterns, they argue, show that inequality is not accidental but structural, built into how families are organised. In evaluating Delphy and Leonard's work, it provides a clear and powerful structural analysis of gender inequality and highlights the economic importance of unpaid labour, challenging traditional definitions of what is work. It also introduced the concept of emotional labour, which is later developed by sociologists like Arlie Hochschild, and it offers a feminist critique of both capitalism and the idealised view of the family. Critics, however, say Delphy and Leonard present women as passive victims, ignoring agency and diversity among families, while liberal and postmodern feminists argue their view is too negative. Some families are more egalitarian today. Other sociologists, such as Hakim and her preference theory, suggest that women may choose domestic roles rather than being forced into them, and other feminists like Walby argue that they overlook how class, race and ethnicity affect women's experiences of oppression. The theory is also based on 1990s family patterns, which may have evolved with changing gender norms and dual-earner households. But despite its criticism, their analysis remains highly relevant. Women still perform most unpaid care work, even in dual-income families. Gender pay gaps, part-time work and career breaks are still linked to domestic responsibilities, and Delphy and Leonard's ideas help explain why progress towards equality remains incomplete. For Cambridge OCR Sociology exams, you could use Delphy and Leonard to explain reasons why gender inequality persists, because the family structure continues to exploit women's unpaid labour. You can also be used as a radical feminist explanation of inequality, looking at how patriarchy operates through the family. We can also contrast it with functionalist views of family harmony, or compare with Hakim or Walby. You can also evaluate it with modern trends and evidence. On the Cambridge OCR specification, the study is ideal for showing how social institutions, like the family, reproduce gender inequalities. That concludes this Tutor2U Sociology topic video for Cambridge OCR A-Level Sociology. In this video we looked at familiar exploitation, the work of Christine Delphy and Diana Leonard. Thanks for watching.